Hey everyone, Mo here, and before the video begins, I just want to let you guys know that my schedule is opened up for me to do coaching again. So if you're interested in private one-on-one coaching for me to help you, whether you're a newer player and you want to excel at the game very quickly and learn the fundamentals without developing any bad habits early, or if you're an experienced player who's already maybe platinum or diamond in your top 1%, but you need some help filling in the gap to get you to that 0.01%, to make you just some of the best, then hit me up on Discord and I can get you in some private one-on-one coaching lessons to help you polish up any skills you want to refine and help you learn all of the secrets to becoming a top player. That's it. I hope you enjoy the video. Hey everybody, Mo here, and in this episode of Deck Guides for Dummies, I'm going to be bringing you a deck guide on the newest deck, the hottest deck from the new expansion of Rise of the Underlords, which is the Lurk deck, including the new champions of Rek'Sai and Pyke. Lurk is probably the most misunderstood deck we've probably ever had in Legends of Runeterra. There's 3 or 4 different ways you can go about building it, and there's also about 2 or 3 different ways that top players have had success with the deck. But there's still a lot of people out there that think Lurk is just a really bad deck. The most used term when talking about Lurk is, oh, the deck is very coin flippy, or the deck is very high roll. If you don't draw super well, then the deck sucks. If you miss your Lurks on turn 1 and 2, then you lose. And people just try and play it like an aggro deck where they jam it out their units really fast. And that's really not the case at all. It's very much the most success I've had with it is I've played it like it's a combo deck, and I'll go more in depth here in the video. So in this video, I'm just going to go over my deck list that I've been using. I used it 63% win rate to get to Diamond, mid-Diamond. I'm hoping to use this deck list to get to Masters later today or tomorrow. Those are my list. I'm going to go over why every card is in it, why I didn't put some cards in it, the purpose behind the deck and how to actually play the deck correctly, as well as at the end, I'm going to go over a full-on Mulligan and matchup guide, and I'm going to go over the general curves of the deck and the different curves and combos to look over. So by the time you finish watching this video, you should have the full understanding of how to play Lurk, how the deck is, really comes together once you start looking at in-depth combos, and you won't misunderstand the deck at all. So before I get into the video, I wanted to remind you guys that 86% of the people that watch my videos aren't actually subscribed to me. So if you can do me a huge favor and hit the subscribe button, it helps out a lot with the YouTube algorithm. It's free, easy, and it really, 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 really helps out. Plus, if you change your mind later, it's really easy to just unsubscribe. So that's it for the intro. Hope you guys enjoy the deck guide. Alright, so for the first part here, we're just going to go over why each card is in the deck, the purpose it serves in the deck, why I chose some of the cards in this deck that you might not see in other decks, or why the specific numbers of them. So we'll just start from the top to the cheapest all the way down. Feral Prescience, 3 of. I mean, very standard. Well, okay, so it's not actually standard. I hear a lot of people don't like Feral Prescience, but it really helps you out with some of your good draws, like nut draws, and make your deck a lot more consistent. Something you'll notice in my deck compared to a lot of other decks is I run a lot of predicts, where I run like Chronomancer. It's not a alert card, but it predicts. Feral Prescience predicts. Like Call of the Pack is like a pseudo predict in a way. Bloodbait can be used as a way to predict or way to make sure you hit Lurk. So all of these ways are really good ways to make sure you hit Lurk. And it's really funny to me that some people will complain about the deck is not consistent enough. The deck like low rolls too much. It's a high roll deck, but then they don't want to play things like Feral Prescience because they think it's bad. So you just need Feral Prescience. It lets you set up all of your good cards, helps you find your Rek'Sais and your Pikes, which are super, super important in the deck. We'll go over those cards later. And yeah, that's why. And 3 of is good. So Bloodbait is a 3 of. So the reason I have 3 of Bloodbait is this card is actually nuts when you play the deck correctly. One of the things that I think most people have wrong about this deck is it's not just like an aggro deck where you slam your units on curve and turn them sideways and swing face. It's very much, I'm playing the deck and having the most success when I play the deck like a combo aggro style deck. Kind of like how old Scouts used to be. If you would just jam all of your units on turns 1, 2, and 3 and swing out, you wouldn't do too well. But once you start comboing them with your MF, it will do really well. Aziraphale is another perfect example of a combo aggro style deck where if you use all of your mana every turn slamming down units, it's not going to go as well if you sometimes pass on your turn 2 so you can hold open spell mana and like maybe you don't just slam out your 1-drops on curve. You wait until your attack token, so then you slam out your 1-drops and now you have a bunch of extra buffs on your like student and your duo and stuff like that. Bloodbait's the same card, so I never use Bloodbait, almost never use Bloodbait to guarantee a Lurk activator. Instead, I almost solely use Bloodbait to combo Rek'Sai. Bloodbait allows you to trigger your same Rek'Sai twice sometimes 3 times if you have like a Bone Skewer in your hand or if you have multiple Blood Bait. The way this works is you predict, you put a Rek'Sai on top of your deck. You attack and you trigger the Rek'Sai with Lurk, right? Well, now if you Blood Bait, it puts a Snapjaw Swarm on top of your deck. So you're going to draw the Snapjaw Swarm on your opponent's turn, your next turn. And then that's when you drop the Snapjaw. So you're not only triggering Lurk on your opponent's turn, on a turn you normally would be missing out on Lurk, but you're triggering Lurk and specifically hitting like a Rek'Sai Lurk. I've had curves like this where you do that, and then sometimes I'll like a Bone Skewer, and then I put the Snapjaw back on top of my deck, and then trigger the same Rek'Sai a 3rd time. Or sometimes you just have second Blood Bait and you trigger Rek'Sai a 3rd time, and it's just like, those are the types of hyper combo power turns that really make this deck just like unstoppable. And those are the turns that let you level your Rek'Sai on like turn 4 and turn 5 and just get some of these crazy ass numbers. And those are just insane power. I was on 2 Blood Bait for a long time, and then I realized just how broken this like Blood Bait comboing with Rek'Sai was, so I went up to 3 Blood Bait. So if you're wondering why there's Blood Bait, and if you think Blood Bait's a bad card, that's the curve that you should be playing, and that curve will make this deck on an entirely new power level and guarantee that you're just playing on a whole nother playing field. Sharkling and Zursai Hatchling, very self-explanatory. 1 mana Lurk units. They're just a way to trigger Lurk on turn 1. Nice cheap aggro decks or units. So Aspiring Chronomancer is really, really good if you need a 2-drop. So one thing you'll notice about Lurk, and you'll notice this in most people's decks that aren't playing Aspiring Chronomancer, is your turn 2 sucks ass if you don't have a 1-drop. Because if you miss your turn 1 because you don't have a 1-drop, your only 2-drop is the Redfin. Or you have 2 2-drops. You have a Snapjaw Swarm, and you have this Redfin Hammers. You don't want to just like a blind Snapjaw Swarm on your attack token, because then you lose out on the Lurk on your opponent's turn, which is, you know, doesn't feel very good. And then you don't want to just slam down this vulnerable card because, you know, giving a unit vulnerable is pretty fucking broken. So your typical play on turn 2 usually sucks if you don't have a 1-drop. So that's what Chronomancer is. It's a decent 2-drop, and also it predicts. And a lot of people tend to forget that this Lurk keyword doesn't have to be triggered by a Lurk unit. You just need a unit attacking. So you can attack with a not Lurk unit. It says, if I'm on top of your deck, well, it just says when you attack. It doesn't say when you attack with a Lurk unit. So if you put a Rek'Sai on top of your deck and attack with Chronomancer, it still triggers Lurk and gives everything +2 attack, which is like nuts. It helps your turn 2, helps your attacking on Even's turn, helps you smooth out some of your draws. 3 Bone Skewer, just because removal spells is great. Card's great with Pike. It's really good to save your units. It's just a nice, cheap, you know, one-sided concerted strike. Or it's a cheap concerted strike, one-sided single combat. 3 Call the Pack is another way to confirm. If it helps you if you ever draw your Rek'Sai or draw your Pike. Usually playing Pike as a unit is really, really, really bad. And I, like, never actually want to do that. Unless I just have, like, Pike with triple Bone Skewer or double Pike, so I have Pike Bone Skewer. And even then, it's not that good. I'd much rather, like, everyone agrees that this Death from Below card is not balanced. This card is, it's broken as fuck. So if you can get a Pike spell, like, guaranteed, it's nice. So because of that, that's why Call the Pack is in here. If you draw Rek'Sai and Call the Pack, you just throw the Rek'Sai on top of your deck, boom, guaranteed Rek'Sai hit. Same with Pike. Guaranteed Pike hit. Call the Pack is a good way to combo with Blood Bait also. If you have 3 mana, you just go Call the Pack, throw one of these champions on top, preferably, you know, Rek'Sai, swing, and then now you have your Rek'Sai Blood Bait combo, and it's really nice. On top of that, Call the Pack is a really good way to never run out of tempo. If you notice, I'm not playing the 2-mana Landmark. 1, I'm not in the Landmark package playing, like, Shapestone. I think that package is really bad. And 2, you might think, oh, well, you're just going to run out of card draw. You're going to run out of steam. Call the Pack and leveling Rek'Sai is not... Like, that's how you don't run out of steam. You just get a bunch more followers, and it feels really good. If you ever level Rek'Sai, you're chilling. Call the Pack gets you cards. It's really good. In tournaments, this card is really good because your opponent, it gives you random cards, and it makes it so your opponent can't read exactly what you have. So, for instance, like in this deck, I'm playing 1 Jawfish. But let's say in your list, you're not playing Jawfish, and you Call the Pack, and you're in a tournament with open deck list, your opponent can be sitting there on turn 8 thinking and being like, well, I don't have to play around Jawfish because it's not in his deck list. And if you generate one off a Call the Pack, then that's really good. It's a really good surprise factor. But yeah, basically Call the Pack's just used on your champions and then to generate units. Hammer, just standard 2-drop. Giving vulnerable is great. I never play this unless there's a unit in play like that I want to kill specifically. And in each matchup, there's a certain unit like that. Like, you'll get an idea once you play. It gets some of the tier 1 matchups. I'll go over this card later on when I'm talking about curves. And I'll tell you in each matchup, in the matchup guide, which is going to be in my Discord, by the way. In the matchup guide, what units you want to be using vulnerable on to guarantee kills. So you're not wasting this early on. Like, you don't want to waste this on a 2-mana 3-2 when in 2 turns your opponent's going to play a Jarvan or something. You really need to save these for very specific units because this is an insane removal spell, and it's a really good way to help you keep Tempo on board and keep ahead in board. Ruthless Predator, I'm playing 2. I really want to play 3 of this card. I know my friend Drizoth is playing 3 of this. The card's really solid. It's a nice cheap pump spell, so it's basically doing what Shapestone wants to do. If you're specifically using Shapestone to cheat out Rek'Sai levels, I mean, this does the same thing, but on the upside of also giving you another unit vulnerable, so it gives you another way to get really good trades and another way to just make sure you remove the cards you need to remove, which is nice. Snap Job, it's standard Lurk unit. You want to be using this card only on your off attack turns, so that way you can trigger Lurk as much as possible. Rek'Sai, because Rek'Sai is broken. Yeah, I don't ever play Rek'Sai on turn 3. Ever, unless you have a triple Rek'Sai hand where you just want to play Rek'Sai on 3 and then use the Rek'Sai spell to put the 3rd Rek'Sai on top of your deck. Rek'Sai on 3 is usually a really, really, really bad play. I think I play Rek'Sai most of the time on like turn 5 or 6 when I can almost guarantee Rek'Sai can attack and level. That's the only time I'm ever playing Rek'Sai. If Rek'Sai is not attacking and leveling, I'm not playing her. And if most of the time, even then, if I can level Rek'Sai, if I can get more value by guaranteeing Rek'Sai on top of my deck and giving my entire team +2 attack again, then I'd most of the time still rather do that. Xerxai Caller, this card is really, really good. First of all, a standard Lurk unit, but also it's a Lurk unit that predicts. So your turn 3 is Omega powerful. This is a really good way to set up into your Bloodbait turns, where you want to go turn 3 Xerxai Caller. Maybe you missed a 1-drop or a 2-drop. So you just go Xerxai Caller on turn 3, put a Rek'Sai on top of your deck, swing. Now you have 1 mana left over, Bloodbait. Now you set up a Bloodbait on your turn 4 evens attacks. Pike, because Pike's broken. Pike as a champion itself, like as a unit, is not very strong. It's kind of okay, unless you have multiple Bone Skewers. Pike as Death Below is it's not balanced. Imagine, the best analogy I can give for this is imagine a Tri-Beam, but just really, really good. You're guaranteed a good unit. This card is a Tri-Beam that can also Ruination your opponent at the same time. And so it's not just saying like, oh, I'm going to Tri-Beam 1 unit down. It's saying I have the potential to go 4 mana fast speed Ruination my opponent, which is not okay. Like that is not okay, and it's pretty wild. 2 Xerxes, or I don't know how to say this card. Xerxereth, the Undertitan. We're just gonna call it Undertitan card. I only play 2. This card's really not super impressive to me. It's really good on turns like 7 or 8 or late game turns, but that's really the only time I ever want it. I don't really play it on turn 5 because it's not usually big enough, and I'd rather just play like 2 units on turn 5. I'd rather play a Rek'Sai and something else, or I'd rather just play 2 2-drops, or a Pike and a 1-drop, or probably just anything other than this. But against control matchups and in the late game, this card is bonkers, right? It's basically Ruin Runner, but on steroids, and everyone knows Ruin Runner is the best Shurima unit. So having a Ruin Runner that's on steroids with +3 attack is +2 health is pretty nuts. And then my final card in this deck is a 1 of Jawfish. I wasn't originally playing Jawfish, but then I found myself in a lot of scenarios where I was like, damn, if I had a Jawfish right now, the game would be a lot better in my favor, or sometimes even over. So I started playing 1 Jawfish, and it feels really, really strong against a lot of the mid-range matchups. If you don't kill your opponent by turn 8, so you get your early aggro damage in, and then the mid-game starts stalling out, and you have like decently sized units, so we're kind of playing this game of chicken of your opponent not wanting to attack you not wanting to attack your opponent. You just wait until you go turn 8, boom, Jawfish, game ender. It's like Riptide Rex if Riptide Rex was good. So that's why I'm really excited to play Jawfish. I'm only playing 1. I tried 2. 2 felt really clunky, and you never want to draw Jaw Hunters against aggro decks. And I was drawing it too much against aggro decks. And 2, the only reason you need to play 1 Jawfish is because you play Call the Pack. And Call the Pack, I've noticed, generates Jawfish a lot of the time. Jawfish generates a lot of the time, so you're pretty happy with that. So making it so that every single lurker you have, including the jawfish, swings and kills your opponent's board is super, super nice. So that's why all the cards are in here. The only key card I can think of that I didn't put in here is the 6-mana overall mutant. You see it's missing? I think the card's just bad. It's just like... That card is just really bad. It's just kind of like a beefy unit. It just doesn't fit. I don't think the card would be bad off of like a Call to Pack, but I think every other card in this deck is more valuable and just strictly better than spending 6 mana on a 6-drop. So that's the purpose behind why every card's in the deck, and that's the reason why I'm not playing some of the other cards that you see other streamers and other deck lists run. So now I'm going to go into telling you the different combos in the deck and ways you should set up curves and look to do that. And that part is the most important part. If you watch any part of this deck video, watch the next part, because learning how to play the deck on curve and learning the deck's combos will actually just make the deck so much stronger and make you feel like, oh, I understand why people are saying this deck is really strong now. Because a lot of people that aren't doing these combos and playing the deck with these curves are just playing this deck at like 1/3 of the power level. So let's get into the next section. Alright, and now we're just going to go over the general curves with the deck. Curves for whenever you're attacking on odds, curves for whenever you're attacking on evens, the curves you want to look for to get your Bloodbait combo started early on. I'm going to put in some Hyper Nut curves for you to level Rek'Sai as early as turn 3, and I'm going to talk about Pike a little bit. So your standard curves for odds, and when you're attacking on odds and attacking on evens, is very simple. It's just when you're attacking on odds, you just play a 1-drop attack. If you have Feral Prescience, use it to go ahead and try and find that champion. And then you just go turn 2 Snapjaw. If you hit or miss, it doesn't matter. And then turn 3, you went to Xerxide Collar and then try and predict another champion on top or something very strong on top of your deck. Your standard curve on evens is about the same. So turn 1, you can play a 1-drop if you have it. Just play the 1-drop. Turn 2, you want a Chronomancer because that's a really good predict card. That's your best turn 2 on curve as well. That way you're not wasting... You don't want to waste a Snapjaw when it's your attack token, because that's literally wasting a free lurk trigger. So you don't want to do Snapjaw, so your next best thing is Chronomancer. That's why it's in the deck, to be a solid 2-drop, on top of the fact that it predicts. So you can go turn 1, 1-drop, turn 2, Chronomancer. Now you have a free predict, so that way you can find a champion on top of your deck, either the Pike or the Rek'Sai, and then now you're attacking with a 2-3 and a 1-drop. If they kill your 1-drop, don't forget, again, I said this earlier, don't forget that Chronomancer can attack and still trigger Lurk. So even if you don't have a 1-drop, you can play Chronomancer on 2, find the Rek'Sai, find the Pike, and attack with Chronomancer, and it will still trigger Lurk. It'll still turn your Pike into a Pike spell, and it'll still give you 2 triggers off of the Rek'Sai. If you don't have Predict, then just... If you don't have the Chronomancer on turn 2 or don't have a way to predict, your best play whenever you're attacking on evens is just to go turn 1, 1-drop, turn 2, open attack, if you don't have a way to predict, and then just go turn 3 Snapjaw, and you'll be perfectly fine there. So those are... They're really not hard for the early turns as far as standard curves go. And then after turn 3, you're just trying to get as many champions on top of your deck when you predict as possible. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about the Bloodbait curves. And I'm going to go over just the really early curves. So your turn 1, turn 2, and turn 3 Bloodbait curves. So you can't do a Bloodbait curve on turn 1 because you have to use 1 mana to attack, so it doesn't really make sense. So the rule for Bloodbait is if you have a card that predicts in your hand, you always want to leave 1 mana open, so that way after you predict and you put that Rek'Sai on top, you have that 1 mana extra to do Bloodbait. So how this works is to set up Bloodbait combo and the Bloodbait lock on turn 2 is you go turn 2, you Feral Prescience, you put a Rek'Sai on top of your deck, and then you Snapjaw. That's swing. If you're assuming you're attacking on evens, you Snapjaw, or sorry, attacking on odds, you Snapjaw, and then you use the 1 mana that you saved from passing on turn 1 to Bloodbait. And then now you have it so where turn 3, you can attack with any 3-drop or attack with that Snapjaw if you want to, or if you have to, and then trigger Rek'Sai. If you're attacking on evens, then Chronomancer sets this up perfectly by themselves. You pass on turn 1, you go turn 2 Chronomancer, oh, there's a Rek'Sai on top of your deck, attack with Chronomancer, Bloodbait. Now you even get to trigger the Lurk and trigger the Rek'Sai on odds, or on the turn don't have the attack token, with the Snapjaw, and it feels really, really good. And all of this, all you have to do is just pass on turn 1, so you have the 1 spell mana, and you can start triggering your Bloodbait combo. The turn 3 setup is literally any predict spell or unit, or even Call the Pack, and then you just attack on turn 3 with Bloodbait, 1 mana Bloodbait open. So this is really easily done if you either passed on turn 2 most of the time. If you can go like turn 1 unit, and then if you either have a predict card on turn 3, either the 2-drop, the Prescience, or the 3-drop to predict, you have enough mana left over to go ahead and Bloodbait. If you don't have any mana and your only way is to set it up with Call the Pack, let's say you have a Rek'Sai and a Call the Pack in your hand, you want to wait until you want to make sure you have 3 spell mana no matter what, or at least 3 mana, so you can go Call the Pack, put the Rek'Sai on top, then attack with anything, whether it's a 1 mana you get off the Call the Pack, a 1 mana you played on turn 1, or anything like that, and then you can Bloodbait after. So the good thing about the Call the Pack is you can curve out unit on turn 1, unit on turn 2, and then on turn 3 you'll have exactly 3 mana for that Call the Pack into Bloodbait setup, and then you can start setting up multiple Rek'Sai triggers with the Bloodbaits. Alright, and then any Bloodbait setup after that, it should be really easy because you shouldn't have the mana constraints that you do on turns 1, 2, and 3. So you just, do any predict, put Rek'Sai on top, and then Bloodbait. It's pretty simple. The next thing we're going to talk about is the curves to level up Rek'Sai. We can level up Rek'Sai on turns 5, 4, and even as early as turn 3. So to level Rek'Sai on turn 5, you just go, you have to attack on odds. You attack on turn 1, turns 2, and turn 3. And you hit Lurk on all 3 of those turns. And then you can hit Lurk on turn 5, or just turn 4 and then turn 5 attack with Rek'Sai. It's really simple. The turn 5 is level on Rek'Sai isn't even really a nut draw. It's kind of just attack with lurkers, hit lurkers, and then if you hit 2 Rek'Sai triggers on turns 1 through 5, then you level your Rek'Sai on turn 5. And it's really not that. That's not even really a nut draw. That's just more of how you level Rek'Sai on 5 if you're going for that more aggressive route. The nut curve to level Rek'Sai on turn 4 is somewhere between turn 1 and turn 4. Attack with Rek'Sai on turn 4, obviously. And you have to either have hit 2 Rek'Sais and then have a Ruthless Predator. Or a Rek'Sai and a Ruthless Predator. And then your nut curve to attack with Rek'Sai on turn 3 is a super nutty curve. You have to be attacking on odds. Go turn 1, Lurk, hit Rek'Sai. Turn 2, play a Snapjaw on your opponent's turn, and then hit Rek'Sai. And then turn 3, if you play Rek'Sai, and then attack, and then hit your 3rd Rek'Sai on top of your deck, then you level Rek'Sai on turn 3. I don't ever really go for this unless I'm just feeling it, Because, first of all, hitting Rek'Sai on turns 1 and 2 with a Snapjaw is really hard. So at that point, you might as well go for it, unless your opponent's in, a concussive palm range. But don't grief your entire game. Don't run into an avalanche or anything like that on turn 3, just to try for this, sub 1% high roll of leveling your Rek'Sai on turn 3. It's usually not worth it. And the last thing we're going to talk about here under the curve section is don't sleep on Pike. If you have a chance to get the Pike spell, I almost always take it, unless you're going for some super aggro plane where you need to hit Rek'Sai into Rek'Sai. If you're not going for an Omega aggro plan, Pike spell is so fucking broken, guys. It can literally single-handedly win you the game. Imagine Tri-Beam, but at 4 mana, so pre-nerfed Tri-Beam, at fast speed, guaranteeing you a Pike. And then it can also just be Pike spell into a Ruination, so it could be 4 mana fast speed Ruination. If your Pike is either leveled or the Pike spell levels Pike, I forget what it's called, below the depths, I think, or something like that. Death from below. If this levels your Pike, it's just 4 mana fast speed Ruination, which is not very balanced. If you ever have a Bone Skewer in your hand, you just go Death from below Bone Skewer, and that board wipes your opponent at 6 mana fast speed. And it's just, Pike is a super, super nutty card that people really don't need to sleep on. It's like if Sky's Descend and Tri-Beam had a child, and that's Pike spell. It's actually just so versatile and just absolutely nutty. It instant wins you games against any mid-range deck, any aggro deck. All you have to do is play Pike spell in turn 3 against their turn 3 champion, and you just win the game from that point because they don't have a good way to remove Pike. So if they try to remove Pike, they have to end up 3 for winning themselves, and you just come out super ahead in card advantage. You take them to the late game and you win. It's that simple. So if you can get Pike spell, I highly recommend you get Pike spell, unless you really are just on this super turbo aggro plan for some reason. Maybe you're against a slower combo deck and you just are going to abuse the fact that they don't have removal spells. Targon is a great example of a region where you just want to have as many Rek'Sais as possible and go as fast as fuck. So other than that, Pike is usually good against any unit-based or mid-range style deck. So the last portion of this video is going to be the Mulligan guide, and we're just going to go over the Mulligans. Alright, and for the last part of this video, the part that everybody cares about is the Mulligan guide.
the Mulligan guide it's really not that difficult for Lurk. The hardest thing about Lurk is just learning to play well, but hopefully after just watching the previous section on curves, you should be big chillin'. So the Mulligan's really simple. I always keep Feral Prescience because 0 mana predicts are really good. Helps you guarantee turn 1. It just helps you predict into your champions and your call the packs, and it's really, really good. You only keep Bloodbait. I know I hyped up Bloodbait a lot, but you only keep Bloodbait if you already have a predict in your hand. That way you can set up the Bloodbait into like Rek'Sai combos. Because if you're not setting up for Rek'Sai combos, then like Bloodbait is really not that good. It's really bad if you're just using it to set up like for lurks. So I only keep it if I already have predict in hand. You always keep call the pack in your hand, and then you want to use your predicts to predict into your champions, and then vice versa. You always want to keep your champions in your mulligan, and then you want to predict into call the pack. Call the pack in champions is just broken. Getting either Pike Spell or just Rek'Sai on top is absolutely nuts. If you have no champion, no call the pack, and then no playable card before turn 3, I would mulligan the entire thing to try and find a 1-drop or the call the pack / champion. So the super key cards you want in your opener is Call the Pack, Champions, and then Feral Prescience. Those are the things that that is almost needed in every single hand for Lurk. And then outside of that, it's all just up to you on curves. Like if you have the Champions and the Call the Packs, or if you have the Feral Prescience, you can keep the 1-drop. If you have the 1-drop, you can keep the 3-mana predict, stuff like that. Like after that, it's very flexible. But the thing you really need the most is Call the Pack, Champions, Feral Prescience. And if you have none of those, you just want to look for a 1-drop and look to try and start forming some sort of plan. So that's going to be it. I'm going to have a full matchup guide in my Discord. If you go to the link in the description below, it'll take you to my Discord. I have a channel in there that's specifically for matchup guides. And that way it'll tell you how to play out each matchup, what your game plan is going to be, as well as it'll give you the Redfin Hammer Smelt. I'll tell you the most important unit in each matchup that you want to be using your vulnerable for. So against decks like Karma Ezreal, I'll tell you which unit you want to use vulnerable for. Against like Ezdraven, stuff like that. So that way you're not wasting your very important vulnerable card here, your very important removal spell, on some shitty unit just because you wanted to tempo out your 2-drop for some reason. So that's going to be at the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what video or what deck you want to make a deck guide on next. I know he's got a bunch of new decks. We got basically just LOR 2.0 with patch 2.11. Super hype. So let me know if you want a revamp thing of like TF Swain, TF GP, the Echo Zillion deck, anything like that. Let me know in the comments. That's going to be it. Join the Discord. I'll see you guys in the next video.